This week, as you can see, we're back in front of the fireplace because, frankly, it's cold outside. And so I've got a nice gas fire to keep me warm. We're going to alter course in our study on the book of Acts. Even though we're getting close to the very end, I think maybe we have 2 more weeks to be a part of that. But because this is the week of Thanksgiving, at least it is for me, we're actually shooting it earlier this week because of the gathering of family on Thursday and the activities leading up to that on Wednesday. So I'm actually shooting this on a Tuesday earlier than normal. Because I want to make this a Thanksgiving theme this week as a part of my expression of gratitude for God, really in light of what the last 12 months has really been for us. And so rather than once again reading the text, I'm going to share a passage out of Jeremiah chapter 37. I'm providing for you an image from a famous painting by Rembrandt of the prophet Jeremiah. I've been in there in my quiet time. I just recently wrapped it up in the last couple of 3 days. And it was getting reacquainted with this great Old Testament prophet. And while it's not by and large, considered an encouraging book because of the challenges that he went through, I wanted to be the sort of the springboard and the backdrop. So watch this image, listen to this dramatic reading of the book of Jeremiah, and then we will pick up on our thoughts and our comments after that.
Chapter 37. Zedekiah, son of Josiah, was made king of Judah by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He reigned in place of Jehoiakim, son of Jehoiakim. Neither he nor his attendants, nor the people of the land paid any attention to the words the Lord had spoken through Jeremiah the prophet. King Zedekiah, however, sent Jehucal, son of Shelemiah, with the priest Zephaniah, son of Maaseiah, to Jeremiah the prophet with this message: "Please pray to the Lord our God for us." Now Jeremiah was free to come and go among the people, for he had not yet been put in prison. Pharaoh's army had marched out of Egypt, and when the Babylonians, who were besieging Jerusalem, heard the report about them, they withdrew from Jerusalem. Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet.
"This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Tell the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of me, Pharaoh's army, which has marched out to support you, will go back to its own land, to Egypt. Then the Babylonians will return and attack this city. They will capture it and burn it down. This is what the Lord says. Do not deceive yourselves, thinking, the Babylonians will surely leave us. They will not. Even if you were to defeat the entire Babylonian army that is attacking you, and only wounded men were left in their tents, they would come out and burn this city down."
After the Babylonian army had withdrawn from Jerusalem because of Pharaoh's army, Jeremiah started to leave the city to go to the territory of Benjamin to get his share of the property among the people there. But when he reached the Benjamin gate, the captain of the guard, whose name was Irijah, son of Shelemiah, the son of Hananiah, arrested him and said,
"You are deserting to the Babylonians."
"That's not true,"
Jeremiah said.
"I am not deserting to the Babylonians."
But Irijah would not listen to him. Instead, he arrested Jeremiah and brought him to the officials. They were angry with Jeremiah and had him beaten and imprisoned in the house of Jonathan the secretary, which they had made into a prison. Jeremiah was put into a vaulted cell in a dungeon, where he remained a long time. Then King Zedekiah sent for him and had him brought to the palace, where he asked him privately.
"Is there any word from the Lord?"
"Yes,"
Jeremiah replied.
"You will be handed over to the king of Babylon."
Then Jeremiah said to King Zedekiah,
"What crime have I committed against you, or your officials, or this people, that you have put me in prison? Where are your prophets who prophesied to you, 'The king of Babylon will not attack you or this land'? But now, my lord the king, please listen. Let me bring my petition before you. Do not send me back to the house of Jonathan the secretary, or I will die there."
King Zedekiah then gave orders for Jeremiah to be placed in the courtyard of the guard and given bread from the street of the bakers each day until all the bread in the city was gone. So Jeremiah remained in the courtyard of the guard.
Doesn't sound like Jeremiah was having much fun, was it? I found this clip from a website, a brief description of the prophet Jeremiah for those of you who are not familiar with his story. And this was by Elisa Wrote, and she wrote this in March 2 of 2020. She writes, though Jeremiah's birth date isn't exactly clear, he received God's call at a young age, probably as a teenager. He began proclaiming God's messages and continued to do so through trial and peril. After several years of preaching, Jeremiah's family turned against him and even plotted to kill him. Over the years, he was whipped and put in stocks, attacked by a mob, threatened by the king, and ridiculed. Some of Zedekiah's princes had Jeremiah arrested, beaten, accused of treason, and thrown in jail, from whence he was then thrown into a deep, empty well. He lived through the siege of Jerusalem along with the rest, and was there as the people were taken away as captives. Perhaps worst of all, Jeremiah was alone. He was not allowed to marry, and his family abandoned him. The people turned against him and didn't believe him. He was alone with the knowledge of the horrors coming for Judah. Doesn't sound like a sort of a Thanksgiving note, does it? Well, it was while I was reading about his being thrown into that empty cistern or well that didn't have water in it, but it was deep in mud. Somebody had compassion on him and actually took him out of that well, as you read, and he was actually put in prison. And I got to thinking, the thing that had to sustain Jeremiah through his call to ministry and the fact that no one ever really listened to anything that he had to say. And he had to watch those around him, those he cared about, his nation, his people, his family, suffer punishment from God because of their disobedience. But in my mind, I'm thinking, because he never became cold-hearted. He wrote at one point, oh, that I had a place in the wilderness for wayfaring men. He was one of those that would like to have had that escape hatch, that retreat center to get away from all the stuff, but he didn't have that. He came back and he was known as the weeping prophet because he never moved away from that heart of compassion for his people and what they were actually enduring. And it was thinking about his being removed from that mud, delivered by mercy, to a starving city. There wasn't food because they were under siege, and actually put in prison where his physical needs were met through that whole season of time. I cannot help but believe that Jeremiah understood what gratitude was, because after all, being well-fed in prison is a whole lot better than sinking and stinking mud with whatever else happened to be down there. So that serves as the backdrop for me thinking about this sort of season and Thanksgiving, because the last 12 months, as those of you who have followed our ministry and watched the videos, it's been a challenging season for my family, for our family. A year ago at Thanksgiving, we were not far removed from the news that Sarah's older sister, her remaining sibling, had been diagnosed with non-small cell metastatic lung cancer. And she began doing therapy. I went online and I read about that particular condition, and it wasn't very optimistic. As a matter of fact, it was measured in terms of how many people survive for 5 years once they're diagnosed. And it's simply broken down in percentages. X percentage make it a year, X percentage makes it 2 years, and so forth. And so while Nancy went through a season of exotic drugs, and they worked very well until they turned against her, and then she shifted over to conventional chemotherapy, which has done its job, but it's done a job on her as well. I share all that to say that 1 year later, Nancy is still with us. She posted on Facebook this week that she was grateful that Sunday she got to go worship with the family. And she was excited about that. Excited about each new day where the birds are singing and she's outside taking pictures of a flower and posting on Facebook. Those days of sickness and nausea, which are far too many, the toll that it's taken on her body, the challenges of her spirit, but she finds reason to be grateful on those good days. We're thankful that Nancy is still with us. In that same season of time, I heard about a cousin of mine Matter of fact, he's married to my cousin. Herb Clarkson's married to Sherry Gale. Sherry was the sister that we grew up with that really wasn't our sister. She was the older sister, and she was a lot of fun. And she and Herb had 2 children, and they've got a slew of grandchildren. They've been great parents and great grandparents. And Herb was diagnosed with cancer. And he's been going through the same sort of routines and rituals for a year. But I can say a year later, he is doing better. And grateful for each day that he has to enjoy life, to continue to serve the Lord and be faithful and do what God has gifted and called him to do. A year ago, we were celebrating the fact that our daughter, Abigail, who through the processes of her own journey had been on spiritual walkabout for a while, when we encouraged her to move down from Baltimore a couple of years before that. She came so reluctantly because she didn't want to leave her life and her friends there, but finances, and some of you get that, dictated that she needed to come down. So she came down reluctantly. But over the course of her time here, God was faithful, surrounded her with good and godly people, and restored her spiritual walk. Whew. Man, am I thankful for that. Not only that, but in the last year, she's got married. She's now married to a man who's been in the Air Force for 16 years, who has a son, and so she's getting to play mom to his son. And she's loving life because he loves the Lord. He's looking forward after his retirement from the military to actually being involved in ministry. So we're thankful for what God has done in Abigail's life. I'm going to take you for a little journey too to bring this up to speed, because this was in the time frame. I'm going to take you on a journey out through my garage to show you a couple of projects that I've taken on in the last year. So indulge this interlude in my talking head kind of experience. All right, I'm going to take you on a little tour that's a part of our theme for the day. At the risk of showing you what it looks like, I have a couple of things to show you in the garage. That's not it. That's my meat slicer for making jerky. I always have some projects going on, and so I wanted to come out and show you that I actually have a working garage. It's not just a storage place. I always have something to go to do that keeps me occupied and theoretically keeps me out of trouble. A couple of projects I'm working on is this little item right here. You might recognize that or not. It's actually a wood chipper. I bought a used electric one, used it once, thought I wanted a Tim Taylor Toolman, Taylor gas-powered one. It looks just like new. Somebody bought it, it quit working. They put it away and I bought it for 50 bucks. Started working on it, hadn't got finished. And then across the other side is this. Some of you may recognize this. This is a diesel-powered commercial version of a Kubota mower. My brother-in-law owned this, bought it brand new in 2011, used it for a lot of years, and then it started making unpleasant noises, and he didn't want to invest the money to repair it. Couldn't find anybody else that wanted to take it, and so I gladly took my truck to Texas, loaded it up and brought it back with a view to repairing it, because it's an expensive lawnmower that I would never have bought. And just in case you're curious, this is what my workbench looks like. It looks like the workbench of any mechanic worth his salt. It's always going to look like something. And before we depart, just note, this is a garage that vehicles do get parked in. My trusty Goldwing, and then the place where the Queen's chariot sits. Now we will resume our storyline. Now that that's over with, those of you who know me very well know that I'm strategic in my thinking. I have a plan, I have a process, I have a purpose. I don't want to just wait and get caught blindsided by what happens. And so a part of that is thinking ahead, not just about myself, but about our family and our children and our grandson. The projects you saw out there in the garage had everything to do not just with my needs and my plans for here. A wood chipper because you got trees, you got debris, and it sure is nice to be able to chop it up and use it as mulch in your flower beds. I bought an electric one off of Craigslist or Marketplace and used it once, but I thought I want a powerful one. I want a Tim the Toolman Taylor one, and so I found this cheap one on there because as we were thinking about our family all being here, and Jonathan and Susan and Liam here, and they were planning on at some point buying their forever home. Like his dad, Jonathan likes being outside in the country. And so their hope was to buy a house in the country, a piece of land, if it meant buying a piece of land and having a house built. And so they were putting off doing that, and I knew that when they had such a place, they were going to have lots of trees, they were going to need a chipper. But not only that, they were going to have a lot of grass to cut. And so I thought, what better thing to take a relatively expensive gifted lawnmower that needs repair, and these hands know how to do that too, to bring that back and make that a project that Jonathan and I can work on together as we look forward to that day when they buy that land. Now, you may recall from last year at this time, a part of what we were being thankful for was the fact that Jonathan in October had been involved in a head-on collision. Coming home from work, a person pulled across, turning into a mobile home park, ignored the fact that he was coming down the road. He hit his brakes, he locked them up, he ran off the road and still hit that vehicle. He spent 4 months in a wheelchair. He has a steel titanium rod in his left leg. He has screws and plates in his right foot. It was almost a year before he was able to go back to work. I think you can understand this if you're a parent. Man, did we have a lot to be thankful for. I remember that day that I was actually attempting to play golf. That's the best I can say anymore. I was attempting to play golf. I was there at the place waiting for our tea time, and Susan called me and said, "Dad, have you heard from John?" And I said, well, no. She said, "Well, I can't get a hold of him. He was supposed to, we had a doctor's appointment, he had something, and he hadn't shown up, and she couldn't find him." And so I waited. I said, "Well, let me know what's going on." And it wasn't long. I think I was on the first. We had teed off. We were on the first fairway, and she called back and said, "Dad, Jonathan was in a car wreck. He's in the hospital. I don't know anymore." And so I went to the hospital, and so we walked that journey. So from October to Thanksgiving. When you saw the images of the car that he was driving that was totaled beyond totaled, to know that God has sustained him through that. Only some broken bones, no head trauma, no back injury. So we had a lot to be thankful for, that he was still with us to celebrate life. And it was that next Christmas when I made the trip home and brought the mower back. And since that time, bought the wood chipper. Now, I haven't got either one of them going yet. They're still on the back burner. So this year has been a year of being thankful that God has sustained our family far and wide. So grateful for that. Grateful that the ministry that we have formed, Church Rebirth Ministries, designed to help struggling churches while we've sort of endured or survived the insanity of COVID, right or wrong, politically driven or not, that the Lord has continued to expand our horizons and our connections and our opportunities to serve and do ministry. I've had a few occasions to preach. I got to preach at our home church at Somerville Baptist. Some of you may have seen that. I've got a great pastor who's a dear friend and walking that journey. He's on the board of directors for our ministry. And so we continue to explore what God is doing, looking forward to the future. And so we're making most of it. We're connecting with family and friends. One of the things I'm grateful for is that my mom is still alive and my brothers are still alive, and they're just never more than a phone call away, and we stay in regular connection. And we have great, great, great relationships. I'm glad that my older brother lives close to Mom, and so he sees her several times during the week to help meet her needs, and that Rocky, our younger brother, is not far from there, and so he too gets to do that and to keep us informed. And we get to share this life journey. I'm grateful that there are friendships that have endured not just for a few years, but really for almost a lifetime. Now, I don't have any real childhood friends that I can go back and maintain contact with, because we moved so frequently growing up that I really didn't have that. It was once I graduated from high school and began my own independent journey, became a part of a church there in Corpus Christi where God lassoed me and called me to preach, and that's been dictated my life since then. I'm grateful for the technology that has allowed us, and as resistant as I was to wading into the Facebook swamp, and I hadn't changed my attitude, it's still a swamp, but it's provided a forum that I've been able to reconnect people from those early years when I was a single young man out of high school, and to exchange life and to hear about them, and for them to be able to follow our ministry and see what God is doing, and to have fun about remembering and to see the connections. For Douglas, my college roommate, who has continued to be a part of my life, I'm grateful because the debt of gratitude that I owe to him for, he taught me so much about grace that he never gave himself credit for, as much as I've tried to tell him since then. So I'm grateful for that connection there. For friends through ministry, for Ray and Jan Dane, who were part of the ministry in Pilot Point, that we've continued to be connected with them in faith. For Carlton Dillard, who leads worship at a large mega church in Austin, Texas. He and I served on staff at a church. I was interim student or youth ministry and outreach, and he was the worship guy there, and we bonded at life back then. And even though we've been separated that was in 1979, 1979, 1980. We're talking about 40 years removed. I got to speak to him just this last week, and even though we both don't look exactly as we did back then, his voice is easily recognizable, and so I celebrate those connections that transcend time and space. And most of these is because of the spiritual connection we also share. And the friends go on and on and on. The friends that we left in Maryland that are still bonded to us, for the few that support our ministry financially. I'm grateful for those connections, and I'm grateful that we got to share a story and a time in God's unfolding plan, and we were part of something that God did that was special and unique, and while that season is over with, then our bond and our affection just simply continues to grow, and we thankful for those opportunities when we get to reconnect with people, when they actually come through this way. Mike and Belle Fahey, who are up in the frozen tundra of Minnesota, who came by and we had dinner with them this past year. For Joelle Settembrini, my Italian friend, my opera star, somebody who couldn't have been more different from me if we had planned it that way, and yet we had a bond that transcended the years of difference and the fellowship that we had, and I'm thankful that he and his daughter came by and paid us a visit, and we got to go eat with them. And I don't think it was 2 months, maybe, when the Lord called him home. Maybe you can see why I find an affinity with Jeremiah, who suffered so much difficulty, but he endured it because he had a holy calling. And he did so in grace. And I don't doubt that he had moments when he was satisfied with who God was in his life. I know that I could go on, and I don't want to do that. I want to respect everyone's time for sharing the journey with me. I'm getting to preach at some places with interesting names. Black Creek Baptist Church. Met some really sweet people there. Looking forward to going back and preaching again and building some relationships there. The bond of people in the kingdom of God that you haven't met is just absolutely phenomenal, because a faith component and connection is something that just really transcends other things. I'm preaching on December the 5th at the Great Swamp Baptist Church. Not all that far from the Black Creek Baptist Church. And I know it's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's almost like going back in time for me, but I'm looking forward to the opportunity, because these are churches that don't have pastors, and they need somebody who can bring an encouraging word to them from the Lord, and I'm privileged to be able to do that. A part of my gratitude is that we still have things to be thankful for in this season. Abigail came up from Valdosta, Georgia, where she and her husband live, and spent a couple of days with us over this past weekend. So roll back the clock just 3 months. Life is rocking along. It's been as it's been. We're making the most out of these days of our lives. Sarah's, child care for Liam when he's not in school, or when they're in online virtual learning. She's his nanny and his school teacher at home while they try to figure that out. And then back the last week in September, you may recall, our daughter-in-law, Susan, went into the hospital with, she thought that she had asthma, and they told her she had pneumonia. And I'm not belabor the details of the account, but to say she went in and she was diagnosed with COVID. We interacted during the course of that week. Texts that I still have and will keep with me. It looked bad, and then it looked better, and we thought we were counting the days until she would be restored to us. But then that Saturday morning, I believe it was the last Saturday in September, in the middle of the night, our son called us and said, "Dad, I don't know what to do. Susan is dead." Whew. So we've had 3 months of really walking through God's grace. It's been a year. It's been quite a year. And what we're thankful for now is we're thankful for a son who is so spiritually grounded that he was the one that introduced Susan to the Lord. He had that honor and that privilege of 14 years of life and love and laughter and a child in Liam. I'm thankful that at her memorial service on the beach, he could say and mean, "I trust God in this, and I'm not angry with anyone." And I'm thankful that we've been able to see his healing, his improvement in these 3 months. While life and strength, he's still recovering from his injury, long days on his feet now on a job, still trying to find his way. But that he knows the joy of the Lord, and he's looking forward to what God has for him. We're grateful that through all of that, we got to see Liam, who turned 9 the week after his mom died. And realize that while he understood loss as a child understands, he doesn't understand grief. And that's a good thing. Because he can miss mom, but he's not like us adults. Or her nephew who's 12 or 13, who knows grief. So Liam has been spared that, and we're getting to see him continue to make progress in his own life and development. So in this season of Thanksgiving, I'm thankful that I serve a God that's bigger than it all. That nothing caught him by surprise. There was never any, oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming. Or, oops, I didn't intend for that to happen. He's a sovereign God whose sovereignty I can acknowledge but don't fully comprehend. It's too big for my little mind. But who has plans and purposes, and that if we will submit ourselves to him, he will take our Jeremiah experiences, where we're trying to be faithful to him, where we're speaking what he says to speak. We're trying to be the person he's called us to be. And even though it's rejected by family and friends and other people, knowing that God's purposes are going to be served through that. And that if we take the time, we can find cause to be thankful. I just watched a video today on YouTube that my older brother put me onto, a guy named Sean Stevenson. Some of you may be familiar with the TED conferences where they invite people of significant influence to come and to speak. And I'll have you look him up on YouTube. I'm not sure what his birth condition was, but he is this full-grown man that's not full. He has this little bitty tiny disformed body, normal size head, and a heart that's this big. Crooked arms, crooked legs, who came on the stage in his wheelchair and spoke to that crowd of perfectly healthy people and really gave everyone notice that if they ever consider themselves handicapped, that's a problem of their mind and a prison of their mind. And to never believe, his first point was never believe any predictions about you that don't empower you. Now, the only thing he said about God was at the end as he's rolling off the stage was, God bless you. I encourage you to go to YouTube and look that up. But I think about in this season of Thanksgiving and this word to you that I'm grateful that you're a part of this journey, and I don't yet know what God has. But if a little man in a wheelchair that's had a life of anything but ease for us can celebrate his introduction to himself was when I was born, my parents were told that I wouldn't live a week. He said now these, I don't know, it was 35 years later, he said, I'm alive and they're all dead. He said the only doctor who's still living is me. I celebrated his enthusiasm of gratitude about life and the fact that he's done something with it. And so my encouragement to you as we wait for the ending of this year, hoping for better things next year, we may be unhappy with the political climate. We may be unhappy with the economic circumstances. We may be unhappy with the center of disease control or insanity. We may be unhappy with the weather. We may be unhappy with the fact that we didn't get a deer when we went hunting last time. We may be unhappy with the fact that we had a cold or any of the things. There was a car wreck, or Nita had a stroke. If we stop and give God the opportunity, He will reveal to us how much we truly have to be thankful for. So I'm thankful to you. I'm thankful to Jesus because He saved me from myself, not just from eternity, but from what I could have been. And I'm thankful that He has plans yet to be revealed to use me, that I might bring honor and glory to His name. I do want to hear from you. Let me know of things that we may want to consider as we move forward, wrapping up our book of Acts. If you have questions, if you have suggestions or ideas, hopefully you've been watching some of the interviews that I've been doing with preachers that are in struggles, and I continue to do that, and I'm enjoying that process. But I'm thankful to a God that loves me enough to give me a reason to keep going when life gets really tough. Even if I'm thrown into a pit full of mud, He can draw me out. He can put me in a palace, although a prisoner, and He can meet all of my needs. And for that, I can be thankful. Let me pray for you as we conclude our time. Father, thank you that you have always been faithful through whatever life circumstance is. I thank you for this time to share and reflect on a year of difficulty, but a year of gratitude. I thank you for these that support our ministry and watch. And Lord, for those that may stumble onto this and don't know you, that we may have the chance to share the good news of Jesus Christ with them. So I commit my family and friends who are part of this journey, that they too can pause and have reason to celebrate your faithfulness in a season of thanksgiving. It's in Jesus' name we pray, and for His sake. Amen. Don't forget, if you want to support our ministry, you can do so through one of the means. If you send me an email, I can show you how to do that. Or if you want to just send a check, send it to this address, and we'll be glad to put that to work in ministry. God bless you. See you next time.